Hey guys, welcome back to Shredcraft RC. I'm Cam, and today we're going to be doing something a little different. Picked up an SCX24. This is the Lexus. Just thought that this was a really cool body option that Axial offered with this SCX24. And so on that, I started this channel. I used to have an SCX24. I had a deadbolt back in the day. Since then, a bunch of other guys that are at the Drift Club and other people that I kind of hang out with have gotten really into these mini RC crawlers. And since it's winter time here, it's an awesome opportunity to kind of do these winter builds and still be able to drive these 124 scale SCX24s inside. And something you can't really do with the 10th scale crawlers without having a large area of space. These mini crawlers are an awesome starting point into the RC hobby, and they provide a lot of opportunity for modifications and upgrades. Pretty much you can do whatever you want. There's so many parts available for the SCX24 specifically. So I decided I was going to do a build series and do it kind of Shredcraft style. So I've got my build log here where I've written down some of my goals and then some of the data points and stuff that I want to collect when doing this. And then ultimately I want to design a chassis that can improve performance but also still be along the lines of a budget-friendly upgrade. And then along with that, I have my corner balance scales that I use with the RC drift cars, and I'm going to be using this to help collect data, because the one thing with these mini RC cars is adding a bunch of weight to them can sometimes affect them negatively, but can also affect them positively and create more performance, especially when using a hard body like this Lexus GX470 here. A bunch of Axial's cars are actually Lexan bodies, but the Lexus and the Bronco are actually hard bodies. I just thought the Lexus looked super cool, and I wanted to do this build series using the Lexus. With that, I picked up the first starting mods that I got here. This is the Endura 66 turn brushed motor. Again, super budget friendly, super simple to install this into the stock car. And then I picked up the Endura stainless steering links, mainly because the plastic steering links, when you start adding weight to these things, it can bend and flex, and then it's not going to give you an accurate steering feel. I've also got some other mods on the way that will be in this video, but after doing some research, it looks like doing underdrive gears in the rear, mainly because if you go to overdrive gears in the front, you have less teeth connection on the worm gears in the diff, which can create more slack in the wheels. So by doing underdrive gears in the rear, there's more teeth connecting on the diff, creating a tighter feel, less slop in the axles. And then a few other DIY mods. I had the idea of doing homemade DIY wheel weights instead of spending money on brass. I also have some brass knuckles coming because I feel like that is a nice mod to have on the front axle. Get some weight down low and up front, and it's unsprung. It is also not rotational mass on the wheels. I see a bunch of people doing brass wheels. That adds a bunch of rotational mass. So I want to document all the stock weights of everything, the chassis, the wheels, the body, the complete setup. See how much all of that weighs and what its weight distribution is, and then I want to add these mods and see if we can create more performance for a very budget-friendly price. I'm going to include all the links for these parts and accessories that I'm going to be adding to this truck down below in the description, so be sure to check that out if you want to follow along or do some of the same upgrades that I'm doing. So I think I'm going to tear into this build. We'll get these scales set up, get the truck out of the box, and kind of get our baseline weights and stuff documented, and then we can start improving it from there. I'm sure many of you know, but the stock SCX24 comes with everything you need to run the car. We have batteries, the remote, and looks like a USB-C charger here. And then we have the truck itself, and I believe the battery is inside there. So you can basically get this thing out of the box and run it. And in fact, I think we might do that now. All right, so we got this thing charged up and turned on. And then I set some rocks up on the desk here. And then I'll attempt to drive and one-hand steer a little bit, and we'll just see what this thing can do right out of the box. So we got steering and we got throttle. The headlights are super cool because they got reflectors in them, and then bumper lights too. Definitely blinding when you're staring at it. We'll see if it can make it up this without tipping over. Effortless. Probably have to make some modifications to the rocks, see if we can make it a little more difficult for it. I started collecting some of the data I wanted to get so far. I have stock flex and ride height, and the way I did that was, so I just took a set of calipers, set it down on the desk, and then raise the wheel to the caliper. It's going to be hard to show one-handed. And then same thing for ride height, measuring at the center of the running board here. So I have a stock baseline for all of these measurements I'm wanting to get. That way I know adding the parts and doing modifications in the future will be performance benefit or performance decrease. So then I went ahead, I measured the stock width, the stock wheelbase. I also have the stock wheel weight at 10 grams. So that way I know adding more weight to the front wheels will be beneficial or not. And then the stock wheel size with the tire, I have that right at 51 millimeters, but I got the Sky RC corner weight system set up here. So let's go ahead and toss this on without a battery. That way everything I measure in the future will be without the battery, because some people use different battery sizes and that can be subjective. So setting the stock SCX24 without a battery onto the corner weight. And it looks like we are right at 261.4 grams. Stock weight, 261.4 grams, no battery. I also want to remove some of these accessories, and it looks like I'll probably have to do a little disassembly inside the body, because I feel like these are pretty heavy for their size in relation to the size of this truck. And then I will measure how heavy those accessories are in total. But if we go ahead and take a look at some of these, we are at a 48 front weight bias and a 52 rear bias, which is kind of the opposite of what you want on an RC crawler. You definitely want your front weight performance oriented. You want it to be at a 60-40 weight balance. I just bumped the scale so it moved. We can probably get some more benefit, especially with this chassis. The battery sits up here, so that could add some more front weight. In the rear here, we have the ESC in the back, the battery in the front, which is a good setup. And then the other thing that I've heard and experienced is that the stock AS1 servo, those burn out typically pretty fast, especially when you start adding weight. So along with the new motor, I'm also going to go the budget-friendly route and add the EMAX servo. Doing these things in stages is pretty fun because you get to see how the vehicle drives completely stock, and then as you add performance upgrades, you get to see how those can benefit the performance and all the driving characteristics of these tiny little RC vehicles. So while I had this all out, just threw the battery back in and then go ahead and check these weights again. Set that down on the scales, and that changed our weight bias to basically a perfect 50-50 weight distribution. Pretty cool to see that and have that data. We'll be able to try and get this truck a little closer to a 60 front, 40 rear weight bias and try to optimize its performance and see how it does. Got the stock body off with the lights and everything, so I wanted to get the weight of this totally stock. So I'll throw it on the scale here. It looks like it is right at 81 grams. So I'm gonna write that down and we'll see how much we can shave off this thing. Inside of here, you have these 6 tiny little hex screws, and the roof rack came right off. And then it looks like these are just bolted on. So once you get the roof rack on, you can take those 2 boxes off. Side gas tanks here and those sand boards, which they are usable. You can turn this little knob, but then those are their own little accessories. So there's definitely some weight up here, so I'm going to go ahead, get this stuff taken off. I'll probably leave the roof rails. This is what it looks like without the roof rails. Maybe a little too soccer mom-esque, but I think those roof rails, leave the roof rails, leave the snorkel. The rear ladder is removable. I decided to leave it. Kind of goes with the roof rack, gives it still the overlanding look. And then over here I got my accessories and the screws removed and the old scale. We'll just see how much weight all of this stuff actually took off the top. So 11 grams removed off the roof, and at scale weight, that's pretty significant for a rig like this. Removing some weight, removed some of the accessories. Sure, they might look cool, but we're going for performance and looks. The old Shredcraft build. And then over here, I've got the electronics tray and battery tray taken off the chassis in order to get to the motor. So I'm going to pull out that transmission and then swap in that 66 turn motor. The transmission out here, and you can see the size difference of these motors. That Endura motor is nearly double the size of the stock 88 turn 030 motor. And then it also comes with this motor plate because it reverses the mounting location. So I'm going to pull this cover off, pull the drive shaft off, get this on, attach the pinion, get it bolted up. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. And there are chances that I might have to do some slight trimming to the battery tray for clearance here on the frame rail. Nothing that a quick pair of snips can't handle. Go ahead and get that in. See how much more power this thing has. The new motor and motor plate in there, and then just test fitting this electronics tray, and you can see right here, probably will have to make a little notch or trim this a little bit for that to sit down flush onto the motor. Got the chassis back together here, but back to the old school days of adding weight. Found this fun little idea that I used to do on some of my older rigs, adding some stainless steel BBs inside the wheel here, and then I'm also going to glue a few along the bumper there, and we'll check out the weight difference that makes just by hand. I can already tell it's not a lot, but it is enough to add some weight down low to negate the weight that we took off the top, possibly change the weight balance from a perfect 50-50 weight distribution, getting that closer to a 60-40. So I'll throw these on the scales and we'll see the difference between stock and DIY upgrade. All right, our stock wheels were just at 10 grams. It says 11. Let's try that again. Yeah, so 10 grams for a stock plastic wheel. The tires are glued on, so you can't remove those. The BB filled wheel without the glue is right at 14 grams. We're adding 4 grams of weight down low. It is rotational mass, but it's not a lot. It's not like putting 60 gram wheels onto a car that's already underpowered. With that bigger motor, hoping that we have a little more power, and then adding that weight. All right, check this out. Just with the BB mod in the wheels in the front bumper, I was able to bump up that weight distribution to 54 front, 46 rear, and that is with the larger motor. We are at 293.9 total grams. Got those wheels weighed. As you know, with the glue, it ended up being 5 grams a piece on each wheel, and then added a few of my own touches. Came a quick coat of bronze with the airbrush there, and then we are ready for the end of what I'm calling stage 1. Still kind of OEM plus build, nothing too crazy. The brass diff covers did come in. Got those steering links on with the brass knuckles. Ended up putting a brass diff cover in the rear just because it will help get some of the weight down low to mitigate this stuff up top here. And then I got the motor and the rear underdrive gears. So I got the scale set up here. Go ahead, toss it on and see where we're at without the reflection here. So total weight, 308.2 grams, and a 56 front weight bias and a 44 rear weight bias. So not quite the 60-40 we were looking for. I do have the battery out, so I'll toss that in. We'll see what it is after that. One of the other things I did was I cleaned up some of the wiring. I actually removed the front bumper lights. They were just not for me. And then I was able to take out the extra wiring harness, and with the Emax had a long enough servo wire that I didn't need the little extension piece that they had here. So I got the battery in here, and then we will see what this weight distribution is on the scales. 332.4 grams, a 57% forward weight, and a 43% rear weight. So significantly improved from where we started with the 50-50 weight distribution. So I have to set up another little rock course here and get this thing cruising and see if I can feel a noticeable increase in performance. And again, I will have all this information documented, and I'll make a sheet and probably put it up on the screen here so you guys can all see where we started and where we ended up. Try out some one-handed driving here. You can see with the underdrive gears in the rear, pulls the rear end down. breakover on this side. And then this big break over here. So I can already tell it's significantly better than when it was stock. It's a lot more effortless in how it pulls itself up, and that's definitely in part to having those underdrive gears in the rear and just a little bit bigger motor. Still the stock's ESC, it still looks relatively stock. And yeah, this is the Shredcraft OEM Plus build. Well, there it is, the OEM Plus SCX24 Lexus. So really happy with how this thing is coming out. Calling it like the stage one. Want to keep it really basic, really stock. I kind of have gone over the top with these other micro crawlers, and I personally didn't see a benefit or enjoy them any more or less than I would if I would have spent less money. So I'll put the tally up here on the screen and you can see the total spent, because I know for a fact and from experience that these little trucks can get out of hand with how much you spend on them, especially when you're buying everything at $10 or $15 a part. All those little microtransactions really add up to some significant costs when you could have probably bought a 10 scale crawler. And I know 10 scale crawlers aren't for everyone, but I enjoy going outside and hiking on the rocks with friends and taking out the bigger rigs. But since I do have a bunch of friends with these smaller rigs, I'm excited to play around with these both indoors and outdoors. And I got a couple buddies building some tracks and courses at their house. We have one down at the drift track, so I'm gonna have this one in my pit bag to take out there. And then another little update, but I have a chassis design and I'll throw the picture of it up. And then I'm getting those cut right now, so I'll be able to test these upgrades with the stock chassis and then having the upgraded chassis. And if there's interest out there for any of you watching that also have SCX24s and are interested in this, I'm having these chassis made out of titanium, so they'll be lightweight. I plan on coloring the titanium so they look cool too, because that's a big factor when building these tiny trucks. I want to make sure that it performs before I kind of release them out into the public. I'm thinking with the titanium rails, they'll probably be at a price point of $30 to $40 for the chassis rail set. And then I had built this chassis set intended to run with stock bumpers front and rear, still utilize the hinge mount on the rear. So it's not a chassis that's cut right at the shock towers or anything like that for ultimate performance. But the idea is bringing the skid forward a little more and lowering the center of gravity a little bit, along with having integrated shock towers. So there's still some other bits and pieces I need to figure out before I think it's going to be a complete product. And I'm going to have some of my buddies here who run a bunch of different aftermarket chassis test them out for me. And then after that, I'll do a video showing my design process, how I designed the chassis, why I did the things I did, along with probably doing an angled skid version for everyone out there who's building comp crawlers and stuff like that. I'm personally not a comp guy, but I just have fun ripping these things around the rocks. So I know this was kind of a long video, but I hope you guys enjoyed it and maybe got some insight into my tuning process and how I keep track of the benefits of modifications, if they increase performance or decrease performance. And I know we just did a few bench tests here, so there will be a follow-up video with this running and then my final thoughts and all that. But make sure if you like what you saw, you hit that thumbs up button, because that helps me out a lot on this channel. And then don't forget to subscribe for more awesome RC content from Shredcraft RC. I'll catch you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching. See ya.